Black Chef's dish impresses master judges. They've never tasted anything like it. The aroma filled the room as Marcus slid the dish onto the judge's table. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes remained steady, focused on Chef Laurent Bisset, the most decorated culinary master in the competition's history. The other judges leaned forward, their expressions unreadable as steam rose from the plate. Marcus stepped back, his chef's coat crisp and white against his dark skin, watching as Laurent lifted his fork. 20 years of cooking, 10 years of rejection, and 3 generations of family recipes had led to this moment. The recipe wasn't just food, it was his grandmother's story, his father's struggle, his own journey distilled into a single plate. "What do you call this?" Laurent asked, his French accent thick with skepticism. "Soul elevation," Marcus replied, the words catching in his throat. "It's my grandmother's okra stew reimagined." Laurent's eyebrow arched as he took the first bite. The room fell silent. The other contestants watched from the wings, some with sympathy, others with barely concealed satisfaction at what they expected would be another rejection for the chef from South Side Chicago. Then it happened. Laurent's expression changed confusion, then surprise, then something Marcus had never seen in all his years watching the show, genuine wonder. The judge placed his fork down slowly, his hands almost reverent. "In 30 years of judging," Laurent said, his voice uncharacteristically soft, "I have never," he paused, seeming to search for words. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" The question wasn't just about technique. It was about something deeper, about how a black chef from Chicago's South Side could create something that left the world's most renowned culinary master speechless. It was about whose stories deserve to be told through food and who gets to decide what excellence tastes like. Marcus took a breath. This wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about answering a question that had followed him his entire career. Did he belong here? Marcus Washington had grown up watching his grandmother Alois cook in their small Chicago apartment. While other kids were glued to cartoons, 8-year-old Marcus stood on a step stool beside the stove, mesmerized as Alois transformed humble ingredients into dishes that brought their entire family to reverential silence at the dinner table. "Cooking ain't just about feeding bellies," Alois would tell him, her hands moving with practiced precision. "It's about feeding souls." Every dish tells a story if you listen close enough. 25 years later, those words echoed in Marcus's head as he prepped in the gleaming competition kitchen. Around him, 19 other chefs moved with frantic energy, culinary school graduates, executive chefs from Michelin-starred restaurants, a few television personalities. Marcus, the executive chef at a respected but modest Chicago restaurant called Ancestry, felt the weight of being the only black chef in the competition. "5 minutes remaining in prep time," called the floor director, her voice cutting through the clatter of utensils. Beside Marcus, Chef Danielle Richardson from Boston's acclaimed Nouveau glanced at his station with barely disguised condescension. "Okra, really?" she whispered, eyeing his ingredients. "Bold choice for the Innovation Challenge." Marcus continued chopping, his knife moving with deliberate precision. "My grandmother would say there's nothing more innovative than taking what you know and making it speak to people who have never heard its language." Danielle's smile tightened. "Well, good luck with that. I'm sure the judges will find it quaint." On Marcus's other side, Chef Tomas Reyes gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. Tomas, a rising star from Los Angeles with Mexican roots, had been the only contestant to approach Marcus with genuine warmth from day one. "Don't let her get in your head," Tomas murmured. "They all talk big until the food does the talking." Marcus nodded, grateful for the alliance in this pressure cooker environment. The competition, Culinary Pinnacle, was in its 5th season as America's most prestigious cooking contest. With a prize of $250,000 and a featured spot at the renowned James Beard House, it had become a kingmaker in the culinary world. No black chef had ever made it past the quarterfinals. "And time's up, hands off your preparations," the host announced. As the chefs stepped back from their stations, the studio lights brightened. The host, Vivian Montgomery, a former model with a practiced smile, approached the judges' table. "Welcome to the Innovation Challenge on Culinary Pinnacle," she began, her voice rising with manufactured excitement. "Today, our chefs will create dishes that push boundaries while honoring tradition." Judging today's challenge, we have Laurent Bisset, executive chef of Le Ciel in Paris and holder of 7 Michelin stars. Laurent nodded curtly, his silver hair immaculate, his expression severe. Alongside him, James Beard Award winner Sophia Chen of Harmony in San Francisco. Sophia, elegant in her tailored blazer, smiled warmly at the contestants. And finally, food critic and author of The Discerning Palate, William Thorne. William adjusted his bow tie, his eyes scanning the contestants with clinical interest. The stakes of this challenge had been made clear. This was the elimination that would determine the 10 semifinalists. Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the weight of being not just himself but a representative of those who looked like him, those who cooked like him, those who had stories like his. As the competition began, the camera crews moved between stations, capturing the drama of creation. Marcus worked methodically, his movements economical. Unlike some contestants who played to the cameras with flourishes and dramatic gestures, he remained focused, almost meditative. "Chef Washington seems quiet today," Vivian narrated for the cameras. "What's going through your mind as you prepare this dish?" Marcus looked up briefly. "I'm having a conversation with my past to create something for the future," he said simply before returning to his work. The truth was more complicated. 3 days earlier, Marcus had received a call that his grandmother Alois had been hospitalized after a fall. At 87, her health had been declining, but this was different. "She's asking for you," his mother had said, her voice tight with worry. "But she also said not to come home, said you've got important work to do." So here he was, channeling everything she had taught him into this dish while she lay in a hospital bed 800 miles away. The okra stew was her signature, a dish she had learned from her mother, who had learned it from hers, tracing back to their family's roots in Louisiana and beyond to West Africa. But this wasn't just her stew. Marcus had spent years in culinary school and professional kitchens learning techniques from around the world. He had worked under a Japanese master chef, learning the precision of kaiseki. He had studied with an Italian nonna in Tuscany, absorbing her intuitive approach to flavor. He had apprenticed briefly with a molecular gastronomy pioneer, understanding how science could transform texture and presentation. All of these influences were coming together in his soul elevation, a dish that honored his grandmother's tradition while incorporating techniques and presentations that would speak to the worldly palates of the judges. 15 minutes remaining," Vivian called out. Around him, the kitchen had transformed into a battlefield of ambition. Danielle was plating a deconstructed lobster dish, her movements precise and confident. Tomas was finishing a modern take on his family's mole sauce, the aroma rich and complex. Other contestants worked with liquid nitrogen, edible flours, foams, and gels, all the hallmarks of contemporary high-end cuisine. Marcus's dish looked deceptively simple by comparison, a rich, glossy stew centered on the plate, surrounded by elements that represented his culinary journey. A crisp okra chip made using a technique he'd learned in Japan. A smoked paprika oil drawn in the pattern his grandmother used to mark her biscuits. Fermented black garlic puree that added depth and complexity. As he completed his final plating, Marcus thought of Alois. She had never been one for fancy presentation. "Food ain't for looking at," she'd say, but she understood the power of the first impression, the way a dish could speak before it was tasted. "And time, hands up, step away from your stations," Vivian announced. The 20 chefs stood behind their completed dishes, some looking confident, others anxious. Marcus felt oddly calm. Win or lose, he had put his truth on a plate. One by one, the contestants presented their creations to the judges. The deliberations were quick for most a few comments, some nods, occasional praise or criticism. When it was Marcus's turn, he carried his plate forward with steady hands. "Chef Washington, please tell us about your dish," Sophia Chen requested, her expression curious as she examined the plate. "This is soul elevation," Marcus began, his voice finding strength. "It's a reimagining of my grandmother's okra stew, a dish that's been in my family for generations. The base is slow-cooked okra and tomatoes, but I've clarified the broth using a gelatin filtration method. The protein is short rib that's been sous vide for 48 hours, then finished with a blowtorch to create a crust reminiscent of the cast iron sear my grandmother would achieve." William Thorne raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious to combine such rustic origins with modern technique. Doesn't that risk losing the soul of the original dish?" The question hit at Marcus's deepest concern, the balance between innovation and authenticity, between honoring his roots and growing beyond them. "The soul isn't in the technique," Marcus replied carefully. "It's in the intention. Every element on this plate is in conversation with my heritage, even as it speaks a new language." Laurent, who had remained silent, finally picked up his fork, and that was when everything changed. The silence that followed Laurent's question, "Where did you learn to cook like this?" stretched across the studio. The cameras, which normally cut away quickly to maintain pacing, remained fixed on the exchange. "I learned from my grandmother," Marcus answered honestly. And then from every kitchen that would have me. Some welcomed me, some merely tolerated me. But I was always listening, always learning. Laurent looked genuinely moved, an unprecedented reaction from the notoriously stoic judge. This dish, it has ancestry, yes, but also innovation. It is personal yet universal. He turned to his fellow judges. This is why we cook, is it not, to create this moment of connection? Sophia nodded enthusiastically. The balance you've achieved is remarkable. There's a story in every bite. Even William, the most technical of the judges, seemed impressed. The execution is flawless. You've elevated comfort food to haute cuisine without losing its soul. Quite remarkable. As Marcus returned to his station, the other contestants looked at him differently. Some with newfound respect, others with intensified competition. Danielle's expression was particularly complex surprise mingled with something that might have been resentment or reluctant admiration. When the judges announced the 10 chefs advancing to the semifinals, Marcus's name was called first, an unprecedented honor that signaled him as the challenge winner. Tomas also advanced, but Danielle, despite her technical prowess, was eliminated, her dish deemed perfectly executed but soulless by Laurent. As the contestants dispersed after filming, Tomas clapped Marcus on the shoulder. You changed something in there today, Hermana. Did you see Laurent's face? I've never seen that man show actual human emotion on camera. Marcus smiled, still processing the judge's reaction. I just cooked what I know. That's exactly it, Tomas replied. Most of these people are cooking what they think the judges want to taste. You cooked your truth. As they headed toward the hotel where the contestants were staying, Marcus's phone rang. It was his mother. Mom, how's Grandma? He asked immediately, stepping away for privacy. His mother's voice was strained. She's hanging in there, but the doctors say, she paused. They say we should prepare ourselves. How did it go today? Marcus felt a knot in his throat. I made her okra stew. Well, my version of it, the judges. They really liked it, Mom. She'll be so proud when I tell her, his mother said, and Marcus could hear the smile through her tears. You know what she always says about your cooking? That I put too much pepper in everything. Marcus attempted a joke. His mother laughed softly. That too, but she always says you cook with your heart on the plate. That's why people taste love in your food. After the call, Marcus sat alone in his hotel room, emotions washing over him in waves. The triumph of the day's competition collided with worry for Alois. He opened his notebook, a weathered journal where he kept recipes, ideas, and memories. Inside the front cover was a photograph of his grandmother in her kitchen, wooden spoon in hand, smiling with the confidence of someone who knows exactly who they are and what they're meant to do. Marcus traced the edge of the photo with his finger. I'm trying, Grandma, he whispered. I'm trying to tell our story. The next morning, the remaining 10 contestants gathered for a production meeting. Vivian Montgomery stood before them, her professional smile firmly in place. Congratulations to our semifinalists, she began. Today's announcement involves a special twist for the next challenge. The contestants exchanged glances. The show was known for its unexpected elements, designed more for dramatic television than for showcasing culinary skill. Tomorrow's challenge will be heritage and innovation, Vivian continued. You'll work in pairs to create a 3-course meal that represents a fusion of your culinary backgrounds. Murmurs spread through the group. Collaborative challenges were always fraught with potential conflict, perfect for ratings. The pairs have been selected based on creating interesting contrasts, Vivian explained, her emphasis making it clear that contrasts meant potential drama. Chef Washington, you'll be working with Chef Richardson. Marcus blinked in surprise. I thought Chef Richardson was eliminated yesterday. Vivian's smile widened. Another twist. One eliminated chef has been given a second chance through our viewers' wild card vote. Chef Richardson received overwhelming support from our audience after her elimination. The door opened, and Danielle walked in, her expression a mixture of triumph and determination. Her eyes locked with Marcus's immediately. The viewers felt her technical skills deserved another opportunity, Vivian added. So you two will be collaborating on tomorrow's challenge. As the meeting concluded and the other pairs began to strategize, Marcus approached Danielle cautiously. Congratulations on the wild card, he offered. Danielle's smile didn't reach her eyes. Thanks, though I'm surprised they paired us together. We couldn't be more different. Maybe that's the point, Marcus suggested. Heritage and innovation, different perspectives coming together. Let's be clear, Danielle said, lowering her voice. I need this competition. I've put everything into my career, my savings, my relationships, everything. This isn't about making friends or telling stories. It's about winning. Marcus nodded slowly. I understand, but we still need to work together to create something that impresses the judges. Fine, Danielle conceded. but we do this my way. Your home-style cooking got you through one round, but high-end dining requires precision and technique that comes from years of classical training. The implication was clear. She didn't consider Marcus's background as valid as her formal French culinary education. It was an attitude Marcus had encountered throughout his career, the assumption that food from black cultural traditions was somehow less sophisticated, less worthy of the title cuisine. My cooking isn't just home-style, Marcus said evenly. It's informed by generations of knowledge, adaptation, and innovation, just like any other culinary tradition. Danielle sighed. Look, I didn't mean. She stopped herself. Let's just plan the menu. What's your heritage dish? The tension between them was palpable as they began to plan. Danielle proposed a menu centered around French techniques with touches of Marcus's background as accents. Marcus pushed back, suggesting a more balanced approach that would truly fuse their culinary perspectives. Their disagreement escalated until Tomas, who was paired with a chef from Seattle, intervened. Hey, maybe take a break, he suggested. Sometimes stepping away helps new ideas form. Reluctantly, they agreed. As Marcus left the hotel for some fresh air, he received another call from his mother. The doctors say she's stabilized, she told him, relief evident in her voice. She's asking for you again, but she also made me promise to tell you to stop worrying and cook your food. Marcus smiled despite his stress. That sounds like Grandma. She also said something else, his mother continued. She said to tell you that not everyone's ready to hear your story, but that don't make it less worth telling. After the call, Marcus walked through a nearby park, thinking about Aloyse's words. Had she somehow known about his conflict with Danielle, or was it just her lifetime of wisdom speaking to a universal truth? When he returned to the hotel, he found Danielle sitting alone in the common area, surrounded by cookbooks and notes. I've been thinking, she said without preamble. Maybe I was approaching this wrong. Marcus sat down cautiously. How so? I was looking through some historical cookbooks, she explained, gesturing to the volumes spread before her. Did you know that many classical French techniques were influenced by cuisines from French colonies, including techniques brought by enslaved people from West Africa? Marcus nodded. Culinary history is often about cultural exchange, sometimes voluntary, sometimes forced. I never learned that in culinary school, Danielle admitted. We were taught that French cuisine was the foundation of all serious cooking, period. She paused, seeming to struggle with her next words. I think I've been trained to see certain traditions as inherently more valuable than others. It was a surprising moment of self-awareness from someone who had seemed so certain of her superiority. Why the change of heart? Marcus asked. Danielle was quiet for a moment. After I was eliminated, I watched the footage of the judges tasting your dish. Laurent Bisset, the chef whose books I've studied since I was 15, was moved by your food in a way I've never seen. And I started wondering, what am I missing? What did you do that I couldn't? The vulnerability in her question caught Marcus off guard. Beneath her competitive exterior was a chef genuinely devoted to her craft, seeking to understand. I don't think it's about better or worse, Marcus said carefully. Different culinary traditions speak different languages. Maybe what you saw was Laurent hearing a language that surprised him. Danielle considered this. So for this challenge, instead of your heritage as an accent to my technique, what if we really listen to each other? Marcus suggested. Created something that's truly a conversation between our traditions? For the first time, Danielle smiled genuinely. I'd like that. As they began to plan anew, the dynamic between them shifted. There was still tension. Both were intensely competitive and had strong opinions, but there was also growing respect. Danielle shared her expertise in French technique, while Marcus explained the principles behind his grandmother's cooking, the balance of flavors, the importance of texture, the techniques that had been refined over generations without the validation of culinary schools. By evening, they had created a menu that genuinely represented both their heritages. The appetizer would feature Danielle's New England background with French technique. The main course would center around Marcus's family traditions with modern applications, and the dessert would be a true fusion, a sweet potato creme brulee that married Aloyse's holiday sweet potato pie with the French classic. As they finalized their plan, Marcus received a text from his mother, a photo of Aloyse in her hospital bed, giving a thumbs up, her smile tired but determined. Grandma says good luck tomorrow, the message read. She says to remember that the secret ingredient is always love. Marcus showed the photo to Danielle. My grandmother, he explained. She's the reason I cook. Danielle studied the photo with unexpected gentleness. She looks like a woman who knows her way around a kitchen. She hesitated, then added, My grandmother taught me to bake. She died before I went to culinary school. Sometimes I wonder if she'd recognize my cooking now." It was the first personal detail Danielle had shared, a glimpse behind her polished exterior. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that she'd see your heart in your food no matter how technical it became." Danielle nodded, blinking rapidly. "We should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be intense." As they parted ways, both sensed that something had changed between them, not friendship exactly, but a mutual recognition, a shared language emerging through their common love of food. The Heritage and Innovation Challenge began early the next morning. The kitchen buzzed with energy as the 5 pairs of chefs prepared their menus. Camera crews moved between stations, capturing the collaboration and occasional tension. Marcus and Danielle worked with surprising harmony, each taking the lead on different elements of their menu. When Vivian approached their station for a mid-challenge interview, she seemed almost disappointed by their cooperative dynamic. "Chef Richardson, you were eliminated and then brought back by our viewers," she prompted. "How does it feel to be working with Chef Washington, whose dish the judges preferred over yours?" Danielle didn't take the bait. "It's been illuminating," she said simply. "Chef Washington has a perspective that complements mine in unexpected ways." Vivian pressed further. "But your approaches are so different. You're classically trained, while Chef Washington's style is more intuitive." Marcus noticed the careful word choice, another attempt to create a hierarchy, to position his cooking as less rigorous, less serious. "Actually," Danielle responded before Marcus could, "I've learned that Chef Washington's approach is equally disciplined, just grounded in a different tradition. There's as much technique in his grandmother's okra stew as in any French sauce." Vivian's smile tightened slightly at being denied the conflict she was fishing for. "Well, we look forward to seeing how these diverse approaches come together on the plate." As she moved on to the next station, Marcus gave Danielle a questioning look. "What?" she asked, returning to her meticulous brunoise of vegetables. "It's the truth. Besides, I'm not giving them the drama they want. We're here to cook, not for reality TV nonsense." Marcus smiled. "Agreed." They continued working, falling into a rhythm that reflected their growing understanding of each other's strengths. When Danielle struggled with the spicing for the main course, she deferred to Marcus's judgment without argument. When Marcus was unsure about the precise temperature for the crème brûlée, he trusted Danielle's expertise. Across the kitchen, Tomas caught Marcus's eye and gave him a subtle thumbs up, recognizing the unexpected alliance that had formed. "20 minutes remaining," Vivian announced. As they moved into final plating, Danielle suddenly stopped, looking down at the main course, a sophisticated reinterpretation of smothered chicken, a dish Alois made for Sunday dinners. "Something's missing," she said, frowning. Marcus tasted it again. The flavors were balanced, the execution perfect. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," Danielle admitted. "Technically, it's flawless, but it doesn't have that quality your dish had yesterday, that thing that made Laurent put down his fork." Marcus understood immediately. "The story," he said quietly. "The dish is technically perfect, but we haven't given it a voice." Danielle nodded, looking genuinely concerned. "Can we fix that in 20 minutes? Marcus thought of Alois, of her hands moving with certainty, of her voice telling him that every dish had a story. He thought of all the times she'd adjust a dish at the last moment, adding something that couldn't be measured in cups or ounces. "Yes," he said with sudden clarity. "But you have to trust me." Danielle hesitated only briefly. "Do what you need to do." Marcus moved quickly, adding small adjustments to each component, a touch more acid here, a hint of heat there, a final drizzle of a sauce made from reserved pan drippings that Alois would never have wasted. None of the changes were dramatic, but together they transformed the dish from a perfect execution to a perfect expression. "And, time, hands up, step away from your stations," Vivian called. As the judges moved from station to station, tasting and commenting on each team's 3-course menu, Marcus and Danielle waited with contained nervousness. When it was their turn, they presented their dishes with a unified narrative, each explaining the elements that represented their heritage and how they had come together. The appetizer, Danielle's New England clam cake reimagined with French technique, received appreciative nods. But it was the main course, the reinterpreted smothered chicken, that again created a moment of transformation among the judges. Laurent closed his eyes after the first bite. When he opened them, he looked directly at Marcus. "You've done it again," he said softly, "but differently, this dish. It speaks of collaboration, of conversation between traditions." Sophia agreed enthusiastically. "The technical elements are impeccable, clearly showing your influence, Chef Richardson, but there's that same soulfulness we tasted yesterday in Chef Washington's dish." William, always the most reserved, added, "The balance is remarkable. Neither tradition dominates, they enhance each other." Their dessert, the sweet potato creme brulee, completed the narrative perfectly, a true fusion that honored both their heritages while creating something new. When the judges announced that Marcus and Danielle had won the challenge, securing both of them spots in the finals, the moment felt like a vindication not just of their culinary skills, but of the possibility of genuine cultural exchange through food. As they accepted congratulations from the other contestants, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text. It was from his mother, and it stopped his heart. "Come home now. Grandma took a turn. Doctors say not much time left." "I have to go," Marcus told the producers immediately after the cameras stopped rolling. "My grandmother is dying. I need to get to Chicago." The production team exchanged uncomfortable glances. "The finals are tomorrow," the executive producer said. "If you leave now." "Then I forfeit," Marcus finished for him. "I understand." The decision wasn't even difficult. Alois had given him everything: his love of cooking, his understanding of food as a language, his very identity as a chef. No competition, no matter how prestigious, could compare to being by her side now. As he rushed to pack his things, there was a knock at his hotel room door. It was Danielle. "Is it true you're leaving?" she asked, her expression uncharacteristically concerned. Marcus nodded, continuing to pack. "My grandmother doesn't have much time left. I need to be there." Danielle was quiet for a moment. "You'd be giving up your spot in the finals, the prize money, the James Beard feature, everything you've worked for." "Some things matter more," Marcus said simply. "I understand," Danielle said softly. "Family comes first." She hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry about your grandmother. From everything you've said, she sounds like an amazing woman." "She is," Marcus agreed, zipping his bag closed. "She taught me that food is love made visible. Everything I know about cooking, about life, really, I learned from her." Danielle nodded, then said something unexpected. "Go, I'll talk to the producers." "There has to be a way for you to compete without giving up your chance to say goodbye." Marcus looked at her with surprise. "Why would you help me? If I forfeit, your path to winning gets easier." Danielle's expression was earnest. "Because after cooking with you today, I realized something. Winning wouldn't mean as much if I didn't beat the best." She smiled slightly. "And like it or not, Washington, you're the best chef in this competition." Within an hour, Danielle had rallied the other contestants. Together, they approached the producers with an unprecedented request: postpone the finals by 2 days to allow Marcus to be with his grandmother. "It's about the integrity of the competition," Tomas argued. "The audience wants to see the best chefs compete. That includes Marcus. Plus," another contestant added pragmatically, "the story of him rushing to his grandmother's bedside and returning to compete will make for compelling television." That last point seemed to sway the producers, who ultimately agreed to the delay. As Marcus prepared to leave for the airport, Danielle handed him a small package. "For your grandmother," she explained. "It's a cannelé, a specialty from Bordeaux. My grandmother used to make them. They're a bit like your sweet potato pie, humble ingredients transformed into something special." Marcus accepted the gift, touched by the gesture. "Thank you for everything." "Just come back ready to cook," Danielle replied, her competitive edge returning. "Because I'm not holding back in the finals." Marcus managed a smile. "I wouldn't expect anything less." The journey to Chicago felt endless. When Marcus finally reached the hospital, it was past midnight. His mother met him in the hallway outside Alois's room, her eyes red from crying. "She's been waiting for you," she said, embracing him tightly. "The doctors are amazed she's held on this long." Inside the room, Alois looked small against the white hospital sheets, her once robust frame diminished by age and illness. But her eyes, those eyes that had watched over Marcus as he took his first tentative steps in her kitchen, lit up when she saw him. "There's my star chef," she whispered, her voice weak but her spirit unmistakably present. Marcus sat beside her, taking her hand gently. "I'm here, Grandma. Tell me about the competition," she requested, each word clearly an effort. "You show them what real cooking is." Through tears, Marcus recounted the judges' reactions to his dishes, the partnership with Danielle, the postponement of the finals. Alois listened with a smile, occasionally closing her eyes but always opening them again, determined to hear the full story. When he finished, she squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "I'm proud of you," she said, "not just for cooking good food, but for staying true to who you are." "Everything I know, I learned from you," Marcus told her. Alois shook her head slightly. "No, baby, I gave you the foundation, but you built something new on it. That's how it should be." She paused, gathering strength. "Every generation adds their own verse to the song. You're singing your verse now." They talked through the night, Marcus sharing memories of their time in the kitchen together, Alois offering final pieces of wisdom. As dawn broke, she asked for her recipe box, a weathered wooden container that had traveled with her from Louisiana to Chicago 60 years earlier. "It's yours now," she said as Marcus's mother placed it on the bed. "All of it, the recipes, the stories, the history." Inside were hundreds of index cards, some yellow with age, covered in Aloysius' flowing handwriting. Recipes passed down through generations, some dating back to before emancipation, when their ancestors had cooked in plantation kitchens, preserving African techniques and flavors even in captivity. "This is more than recipes," Aloysius told him, her voice fading. "It's our family's journey, from slavery to freedom, from south to north. Every dish tells part of that story." Marcus held the box carefully, understanding the profound responsibility he was being given not just to cook these dishes, but to continue their evolution, to keep their stories alive. "I'll honor them," he promised. "And you?" Aloysius smiled, her eyes growing heavy. "I know you will." She looked at him with sudden clarity. "Now you listen to me. You go back to that competition and you cook your truth. Not for the judges, not for the cameras, for everyone who never got the chance to be heard through their food." They were the last words she spoke directly to him. Later that afternoon, with Marcus and his family gathered around her bed, Aloysius Washington passed peacefully from this world, leaving behind a legacy of love expressed through food. 2 days later, Marcus returned to the competition kitchen, the recipe box tucked safely in his luggage. The other contestants welcomed him with genuine sympathy, Tomas offering a brotherly embrace, Danielle a respectful nod of acknowledgement. "Welcome back, Chef Washington," Vivian said as the cameras prepared to roll. "We're very sorry for your loss." Marcus nodded his thanks, noting how her expression of sympathy seemed to contain a calculation of how his grandmother's death might affect the dramatic arc of the episode. The final challenge was announced. Create a 3-course meal that represented the chef's complete culinary voice, past, present, and future. They would have 5 hours to prepare, with the winner announced after the judges' deliberation. As Marcus worked at his station, he felt Aloysius' presence guiding his hands. For the past course, he prepared a refined version of her okra stew, not the reimagined version from earlier in the competition, but a faithful rendition of her original recipe, elevated only through impeccable technique and presentation. For the present course, he created a dish that represented his current culinary voice, a fusion of Aloysius' teaching with all he had learned since leaving her kitchen. It incorporated techniques from his professional training, but remained grounded in the flavors and principles she had instilled in him. But it was the future course that truly challenged him. How could he represent a future that now seemed so different without Aloysius in it? As he pondered this question, he remembered her final words to him. "Every generation adds their own verse to the song." With sudden clarity, Marcus understood what his future dish needed to be. It would incorporate elements from Aloysius' cooking, but transform them in ways she might never have imagined. It would be in conversation with other culinary traditions, including techniques he had learned from Danielle during their collaboration. It would honor the past while creating something entirely new. As he worked, Marcus noticed Danielle watching him from her station. Unlike their earlier encounters, there was no judgment in her gaze, only professional respect and perhaps a touch of curiosity. She too was creating food of remarkable precision and creativity. When the time came to present their meals, each finalist, Marcus, Danielle, and Tomas, had created menus of exceptional quality. The judges tasted each course in silence, their expressions revealing nothing. After the final dish was presented, the contestants were asked to wait while the judges deliberated. In the green room, an unexpected moment of camaraderie emerged between the 3 competitors. "Whatever happens," Tomas said, "it's been an honor cooking alongside both of you." "Agreed," Danielle said, surprising Marcus with her sincerity. "I've learned more in these weeks than in years of professional kitchens." Marcus nodded. "My grandmother would have loved to see this 3 chefs from different backgrounds, each with our own story to tell through food, each listening to the other's stories." When they were called back before the judges, Marcus felt a strange sense of peace. Winning would be wonderful, but he had already achieved something more important. He had told Aloysius' story, their family's story, through his cooking. He had made their culinary language heard and respected in a space that had historically excluded it. Laurent Bisset, his expression unusually gentle, addressed the finalists. "Today, we tasted 3 remarkable culinary journeys. Each of you demonstrated exceptional skill, creativity, and personal vision." Sophia added, "What impressed us most was how each of you honored your roots while pushing boundaries." William nodded in agreement. "The technical execution across all 3 menus was impeccable, Our decision came down to which chef most successfully integrated past, present, and future into a cohesive culinary statement. Laurent continued, "The winner of this year's Culinary Pinnacle competition is..." The pause seemed eternal. "Chef Marcus Washington." The announcement hit Marcus in waves: shock, joy, grief that Alois wasn't there to witness it. And finally, a profound sense of validation not just for himself, but for the culinary tradition she represented. As confetti fell and cameras captured his reaction, Marcus thought not of the prize money or the professional opportunities that would follow, but of Alois's kitchen, of her hands guiding his as he learned to make biscuits, of her voice telling him that cooking was about feeding souls. In his acceptance speech, Marcus spoke from the heart. "This victory isn't just mine. It belongs to my grandmother Alois, who taught me that food is love made visible. It belongs to all the cooks who came before me, whose innovations and adaptations in the face of hardship created a culinary tradition that deserves recognition alongside any in the world." He looked at Laurent, whose emotional response to his cooking had begun this journey. "And it belongs to everyone who's willing to listen to stories told through food, to taste histories and cultures different from their own, and to recognize that excellence comes in many flavors." The competition ended, but the story continued. Marcus used part of his prize money to establish a culinary scholarship in Alois's name for young chefs from underrepresented backgrounds. He expanded Ancestry, his Chicago restaurant, creating a menu that told the story of African-American culinary evolution while incorporating techniques and influences from around the world. Perhaps most surprisingly, he and Danielle eventually became collaborators again, co-authoring a cookbook that explored the historical connections and contemporary conversations between their culinary traditions. The book's introduction acknowledged how their initial misconceptions about each other's cooking had given way to mutual respect and learning. 6 months after the competition, Marcus received a letter from Laurent Bisset. The renowned chef had been so moved by Marcus's cooking that he had embarked on a journey to explore African influences on global cuisine, a subject largely ignored in elite culinary circles. "Your grandmother's okra stew opened my eyes," Laurent wrote. "After 50 years in professional kitchens, you showed me that I still have much to learn. This is the greatest gift one chef can give another." In his Chicago restaurant, Marcus kept Alois's recipe box displayed prominently near the entrance, a reminder to himself and a statement to the world that the most valuable culinary education he had received had taken place not in prestigious cooking schools, but in a small apartment kitchen at the side of a woman who understood that every dish tells a story, if you listen closely enough. And in the restaurant's kitchen, he often shared with his staff the words Alois had spoken to him that final night. "Every generation adds their own verse to the song." In his cooking, in his teaching, in the opportunities he created for others, Marcus Washington continued to sing his verse, a melody that honored the past while creating new possibilities for the future. Ask yourself, what stories are told through the food of your culture? Whose voices might be missing from the conversations about what constitutes great cooking? How might listening to different culinary traditions enrich our understanding not just of food, but of each other? If you've enjoyed this story of culinary heritage and recognition, please consider subscribing to At Persifistories for more narratives that explore the complex intersections of culture, identity, and human connection. Share in the comments how food has connected you to your own heritage or helped you understand someone else's.